is the website. 1L, 2T's in Aylett, identified by his Hawaiian shirt. We haven't got the combi van yet, but we're working on it.
Yes.
G'day, mate.
We might get it. G'day. How you going?
Not bad. What's happening?
Well, there's the World Cup that's going on.
Oh, mate, isn't that turning out to be a debacle for those who subscribe through Optus?
Yeah.
Now, let me guess. This seems to be a theme.
Mm-hmm.
You know, Mimo to all people in technology.
Yes.
This is becoming a common theme. Even lay people are getting bored with it. We kind of figure that when you have an event like this, yes, significantly higher than normal numbers of people will want to stream.
Yep.
We also perhaps quite ignorantly assume that you will facilitate such streaming, that you're already aware of this fact and that you've made technical provision for it to happen.
Yeah, well, that's kind of why you've got the exclusive streaming rights, mate.
Indeed. It probably also brings into question whether or not we should be offering such rights. I'm surprised that this didn't fall under the umbrella of some anti-siphoning laws somewhere, to be honest.
Well, because it's not siphoning, but it...
No, just siphoning from free-to-air TV.
Oh, yeah. Well, yes, I guess it would be. Now it's turned out to be a real headache for Optus. They've gone and, they basically got what they wished for. They got a really massive event which lots and lots of people want to watch, but it looks like that somewhere along the lines, the streaming systems have not quite come up to scratch. So we've found ourselves wanting...
What point do we say, oops, Ben?
Well, Optus have already said oops. And as I was in the studios at Channel 9 talking about it, they were having a press release and they said, you know what, for the next 48 hours, we're going to let SBS stream all the stuff that we were going to stream while we work this out.
Which is tantamount to admitting that what they have got is not up to speed.
Yeah, and look, to be honest, that's really the only way they could have gone. A second to just throwing your hands in the air saying, okay, that's it, we can't do it, all over to SBS, thanks.
They must have been able to know whether they could or couldn't do it. I mean, we're talking about Optus here. We're not talking about people who don't know anything about streaming and don't know how the internet works. We're talking about people who've always been there as long as the internet has been there. So let's be honest, it's going to be a pretty hard sell for them.
There has got to be a few people out there with some real network and communication skills that are looking at the way this is all going together at Optus, and probably Optus contractors or employees looking at this saying, look, it's not going to work, guys. The way you want to get it done, it's not going to fly. You're going to come cup time, and as soon as the loads hit peak, you're going to be failing. You can't do it. So I'm sure that there are people inside Optus, because they do have good people in there, and I'm sure there are good people in there saying, look, it's not going to work. I appreciate you guys are trying to fit a budget, but it's not going to work.
Yeah. I suppose we probably also do have to ask the question, did somebody try and plug a square peg in a round hole and then wonder why it doesn't fit?
Yeah, well, look, along the line somewhere, somebody must have tried to do something a little bit differently.
What do I always say? If ever you're looking for a problem in something, find the penny pinching.
Yeah,
absolutely. There you will find the source of the problem almost inevitably.
Yeah, either the penny pinching or someone who's misinformed about which way to go, and that particular person had a whole lot of pull in the way that things were going to be structured. They didn't rely. They probably didn't rely. I'm not going to say for sure.
But they would have to know how many people have subscribed to the service. It's a specialist subscription service, right?
That's right. Yeah,
so you know
a month. Thanks very much.
How much?
$15 a month.
Right. So you know over and above anything else you've got.
Yeah.
So you've logged onto this service. So straight away they know.
Yes.
How many people want by the number of subscriptions they've got.
That's right.
So why would it be an issue? I mean, at some point somebody would say, let's pull a figure out of the air. We've got 1 million people subscribed to this.
Yep.
So we know, and especially bearing in mind that a lot of this stuff is very specialised, at that point you'd have to say, can we cope with 1 million people logging onto this?
Yeah. Well, look, the people who were subscribers to Optus as a telephone and internet service provider, they didn't report any problems. The problems seemed to pop up when we had someone subscribing to Optus Sport that were maybe a Telstra or an iiNet subscriber. So when they were using a different network to Optus, that's when things started to fall down. I also found...
But Optus still know how many people are subscribed, regardless of where those subscribers come.
Yeah, look, no excuses. Absolutely no excuses. So Optus knew well ahead of time just by looking at the sales figures. So they knew the names, the addresses, the type of equipment that these people are using and what sort of subscription they've got. They knew ahead of time what the demands were going to be. What I think caught them out is having to deal with talking between different internet service providers where they might not have made enough allowance for it. And there was also an issue with people using Apple devices, so like the Apple TV or some other streaming service connected to an Apple device.
Somebody using Apple TV. Nothing to see here, folks. Move on. People use Apple TV all the... I mean, seriously, Ben, we're talking about Technology 101 mistakes here from a company that is highly experienced in technology.
Yep.
You know, if this was some new start operated by a couple of blokes who'd been pretty hopeful about what was going to happen, we might accept it. But in this particular instance, we're talking about a telecommunications company that's highly experienced.
And they are a bit of a juggernaut as well when you're talking worldwide. We're talking Singtel. So
how the hell did they get it wrong?
I don't know. I really, really don't know. And it's really, I think it's put Optus's future as far as a streaming powerhouse in real jeopardy. They've done the right thing in opening it up to SBS for the next 48 hours. Which
well, they had no option. Otherwise, people would have ended up taking him to the Trade Practices Commission or something, mate.
And I don't think their troubles are over. They've still got a bit of a hill to climb after this because sports fans are the most rabid fans.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Yep. Never underestimate how passionate sports fans are.
That's right. So you get a soccer supporter, an absolute fanatic who loves it. He's got all the gear on the walls and all the trophies and all the stuff. And he's got his Apple TV there and it says, please try again later. They are not going to forget that for a long time.
No.
So this is going to hurt Optus for a while.
And the other thing I suspect we're going to see will be, how could I put it? A little thing like, Dear Optus, I would like my $15 back now, please. There's no more waiting with Petrini Painting.
on 882 6PR. This is Perth Tonight with Chris Ilsley.
By the way, if you do have any technical issues you'd like resolved, or at least pointed in the right direction to maybe getting them resolved, Ben Aylett is the man to have a chat to. 922 882, our telephone number. Don't forget you can get in contact with Ben direct to benaylett.com.
That's right.
Is a website.
Yeah. And sorry, just a quick shout out to the people who are watching on my YouTube live stream. Sorry about that last bit of blank air. I didn't switch to the next little ad I throw in there. So if you're interested, go to tiny.cc/tech tonight and check out the YouTube live stream if you're interested. And you can also catch the shows later on.
Beautiful.
Well. Yep.
All right. Now, something else that we've been talking about was a Facebook hoax. What Facebook hoax have we got now, Ben? I mean, we don't have hoaxes on Facebook.
Oh, of course not. No, it's all true. It's all true. So this Facebook hoax, the one that's been getting around and really getting up my nose lately, is how people are saying, hey, look, there's this new Facebook algorithm change where...
Is this the 26 friends job?
The 26 friends. I mean, please, come on. Facebook, yes, it does have algorithm changes. They are small, slight tweaks, and sometimes they make a bit of a difference to businesses, but that's all expected. But there is no way, and Facebook have even come out and denied this, there is no way they're going to limit it to 26 friends. I mean, come on, guys. And look, if anyone's at all curious about seeing, when they see something on Facebook or social media in general, or an email that claims something that's quite unusual and really compelling, and you think, oh, geez, I've got to get onto that and share it, don't be lazy. Go on over to Snopes.com and look it up, because this...
Oh, you haven't heard the latest, have you?
Oh, what's the latest?
The latest is now that those who would believe what they want to believe say that you can't believe Snopes. That's the latest.
Come on! Oh, really? Okay.
Yep, that's the latest.
Right, fine. Well, then there's some people we just can't help.
That's
all
true.
right. So look, Snopes.com, they do a good job. They make their money through the advertising on the website, and people make donations to the Snopes website and the researchers as well. So I would say that Snopes, and I've been depending on these guys for years, and they've never steered me wrong. They do actual fact checking. They save you the work of going and doing fact checking. They do it for you and then just put it out in a simple report. And it's easy. So please, everyone on social media and everyone with an email account, before you share something, please go to somewhere like Snopes.com or hoaxslayer.net, I think it is.
Yeah.
So Snopes.com or hoaxslayer.
You know the other problem you run into though, don't you?
What's that?
Well, perhaps the first piece of advice, there are things, classic example, worldtruthtv.com, right? Kindest thing we can say about that, nut job website.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
Nothing printed there is even half true.
Yep.
Don't go to places like that and then believe it. I mean, you read it on all of these obscure, and of course what happens is all these obscure websites, and what you do is you say, gee, that just goes to show that the mainstream media is conspiring to hide this from us. No, that's not what's happening. What's actually happening is you're reading a nut job website.
Yeah, that's what they want you to think.
Yes. And if you want to read and believe what's on nut job websites, then sadly, that's what you are going to become.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And it's, you might find it entertaining and interesting and, sometimes a riveting read, all the while knowing that it's not true, but it just drives the people around you bananas, because sometimes people don't want to hear about conspiracy theories. Sometimes they don't find it interesting or curious, whatever, when you start going on about these crazy conspiracy theories. I've got someone in my life at the moment who is spending a lot of his time looking at conspiracy theories on YouTube, of all places. And some of the stuff that he comes up with, it just makes me shake my head and say, man, I can't wait for you to get out of this stage and then go into back to being intelligent and really thinking things through.
Is that sometimes normality, it's like, we apologise for this break in transmission. Normality will return soon.
Yep.
Just around about the time you stop reading these rubbish websites.
Yes.
Maybe with all this fake news and all the push against that on social media, perhaps eventually somebody like Google will catch up with some of these Facebook, these websites that people are then posting on Facebook and say, no, we don't want to provide a host to this because actually you're a bunch of idiots.
Yeah. Now, that's interesting. So that's when social media platforms and search engines start getting into curating the things that they allow to be published. And then they start becoming more of a publisher or an editorial service, which then comes with a whole bunch of other responsibilities and a whole lot of other baggage. What they're doing to get around that is to not block certain things being published, but more endorse things that they trust to be true. So let's say WA Today they post something, and because WA Today has got a decent reputation and a good standing within social media, they're going to get that little thumbs up or that little tick next to their name to say, yes, they're a verified publisher. The stuff that they say has been fact-checked and they've got a pretty good record. When you start having a publisher maybe post some dubious information, then their rating will come down until eventually that little tick goes away, and then they just start to become a little less trusted. So they're using that verification mechanism to make sure that what you're reading is as close to legit as you can get on the internet.
That makes sense.
Yeah. And that's
Look, there's a lot. See, one of the great challenges we now face is how much stuff is out there that it's just an absolute crock.
Well, it's really, really simple. You just have to turn on your brain. So if it starts to sound really fantastic and amazing and too good to be true, guess what?
It is.
Exactly. Yeah. And don't be afraid to do some fact checking. You're probably doing yourself and all your friends a favour. So it's,
but you know what it is? A lot of it is confirmation bias. People would like to believe it's true.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And because they'd like to believe it's true, they're prepared to say, oh, it must be true.
Yeah.
Nobody stops and says, well, actually, maybe we need to consider for a moment, is this true? And let's do a little bit of fact checking. And when we work out whether it is or it isn't true, only then will we comment.
Yep. That's right.
Good luck with that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Shouldn't be a case, but mate, good luck with that.
Unfortunately, yes. So, look, I suppose the moral of the story, before you share anything, just check to make sure it's true. And there are websites out there that are going to help make that job easier for you.
Yeah. Yep, I say. Good luck with that.
Yeah, I know.
It's one of the problems when you're looking at something and you really want it to be true, and you now have a vehicle by which it can be true, well, then I guess it is going to be true.
Yes.
Sad, but also true.
Perth Tonight
for Herman's Hermits, August 4th.
You might wonder how blind people deal with everyday challenges. Well, normally the answer is simple. We're not that different from you. We play music. We go to school. We go to work. You get the picture. But sometimes the simplest things can be difficult, and we need a pair of eyes.
Connect to
first available helper.
That's where you come in.
establishing video connection.
Through your smartphone, Be My Eyes connects the blind with sighted people through a live video connection. Simply choose if you need help or want to help by the click of a button.
That's a nice picture of you and your family, Caroline. Is it for a present? Yes, it's a photo from my parents.
You can help just by installing the Be My Eyes app,
Print image.
and we'll notify you when someone needs your help. And if you're in the middle of something, don't worry. Someone else will step in.
That dog is way too old.
So, would you care to be my eyes?
Perth Tonight with Chris Ilsley on 882 6PR.
Yes, indeed. Ben Aylett here. BenAylett.com is the website. By the way, if you've got any technical questions, anything malfunctioning, there's a man to have a chat. Maybe nothing's malfunctioning anymore. Maybe there's so much stuff, we're so busy trying to navigate our way around scammers, fake news and the whole bit, we don't notice when the machine's not working properly.
Yeah, actually, it's something I've noticed over the years that I've been working in IT. So just a bit of a background, I have been working with technology for over 25 years. So I've gone from a time when all the computers were beige and big and noisy to a time now where we have, things like smartphones and tablets and things.
Yes.
And as the hardware's changed, I've seen the attitude to the way we maintain our hardware change as well. So nowadays, we've got devices, if it breaks down, no big deal. We go and get another one and use our username and password to sign into the cloud-connected account, and away we go. Back in the day, people would think nothing of dropping $400, $500, $600, $700 to repair a desktop computer because that's where the data lived.
Wow.
And it was actually, back in the day, it was actually cheaper to repair than it was to actually replace it. So I would see systems where I'd visit them, about 4 or 5 times in their lifetime, and I would replace some bits and pieces as we go, and we upgrade as we go, and it was a much longer service life.
I think what happened, though, didn't we see so much advancement in software? And wasn't software moving so fast that nobody, that basically you couldn't keep up? That the software, certainly through the latter part of the 90s and the earlier part of the noughties, there's no doubt that the software upgrades were happening so fast. And because the software was always written to the hardware standard of the day, very, very often somebody could have a computer 2 or 3 years later, computer's perfectly fine, but its hardware couldn't run the software that was now standard.
No, you're bang on. So the late 90s, early 2000s, we did see a lot of upgrades were forced by the software instead of the hardware.
Yeah.
And that was the case. And that quite often was seen on the desktop, not so much with servers and other industrial machines. Those things were still kicking on about 20 years later. But it was true that around that time, let's say Windows 95 came out and then Windows 98 came out. And whatever used to run Windows 95 back then would struggle with Windows 98.
Yes. In fact, I remember working with a system where they didn't upgrade the hardware. And within 2 or 3 versions, the software had all but stopped it.
Yes.
They were forced to upgrade the hardware. Now, you kind of imagine what would have happened to your average home PC under those circumstances. Well, mate, things wouldn't have been too flash, let's put it that way.
No, would not have gone down well at all. So, yes, things have changed. And they've changed a lot. So,
yeah, they certainly have, haven't they?
Now, I don't know. Have we changed for the better? Have we changed for worse? I mean, e-waste is now an issue.
Yeah. Well, that's probably what it was about too.
Yeah.
It probably got down at some point to somebody saying, well, you know something, we cannot continue with this waste.
Yeah. So we are seeing a more conscious move on companies' behalves to...
Look, hallelujah. I mean, when we get into the point where it was just ridiculous.
Yeah.
Stuff would become... The old adage about it's outdated in 6 months was actually quite true.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
Insane. Now,
yes,
there's been a bit of discussion about Huawei, the Chinese telecommunications company.
Yes.
And its security risk. I mean, there is something about it doing some of the communications and switching as part of the MetroNet here in Western Australia. Been suggestions that the federal government have questioned and have questions. Some of our security agencies have questions over this Chinese company and its security. I think they're all relevant questions, quite frankly. I mean, I know that you like the product. I'm well aware of that.
Yeah, the phones, I have a hard time finding phones at a better value for money. They are really quite good. Really good. Yeah.
Which begs the obvious question, though, what about security issues?
Well, look, security is always a concern, and we always get concerned when we have unknowns. So in the absence of facts and the absence of open communications and just laying everything bare and saying, yeah, this is how it works and this is what we do. And you're more than well going to throw the doors open. You're allowed to have a look through everything and just make sure everything's all tickety-boo.
Yep.
In the absence of that, people are going to start having their own interior sort of monologues, their own sort of narratives, and they're going to say, oh, what about this? And oh, what about that? And people start to get a little bit edgy because they've let their imagination run away with themselves. But yeah, getting onto the security concerns around Huawei, I can see how we've got there. It is a government government controlled.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay.
Well, I think it is. And let's put it this way: I don't think there are too many companies in communist China that don't have some sort of influence from the government. Let's put it that way.
Okay, so we'll go along with that, even though we're just playing into the hands of this story here. We're not actually fully informed about the structure of Huawei and where their government steps in and steps out. But
well, let's put it this way: it's a communist country.
Yeah,
right. That is a fact. That still remains a fact. It's something that people tend to quite often ignore.
Yep.
But nonetheless, China is a communist country.
Yes.
So the short answer is the government steps in and steps out as it chooses when it chooses, because that's how they operate in countries like that.
Yeah.
At best, China has an authoritarian government.
Mm-hmm. And I think that's where the concerns stem from, and they just grow out from there. So Huawei have been basically pulled back from supplying a whole lot of 5G infrastructure in PNG, I believe, and also in parts of Australia. So it's kind of, if Huawei were to have their way, we'd be putting a lot of eggs in someone else's basket. And you know, putting the national security thing to one side, from a business security side of things, I mean, if we have any problems with Huawei, if there's a massive failure or it's just creating a big point of failure where things can go wrong. Yeah. And this is where it makes sense to have different parties taking care of different stages. So, you know, each party's got their own area to look after, and they can look after it really well.
Yeah.
Whereas spreading them thin, I mean, I understand Huawei's huge. They're actually very good technology, but it's just not only a national security concern, but also a general business concern as well.
Yeah, no, I understand your logic from both parts, but something we most certainly do have to do is we most certainly do have to take into account the security issues.
Yeah.
And look, it is, I would argue, very, very difficult, if not impossible, for a company like that based in China to argue that it is completely divorced from the government. It doesn't have in its own country any sort of legal recourse against its government. It's living under, at best, an authoritarian government that does what it pleases, when it pleases, at a time of its own choosing.
Yeah, that's right. And I think what Huawei and I suppose the Chinese government have to realise is that trust is a very hard commodity to earn. And it takes a lot of hard work.
Well, look at what happened with the Crown employees over Macau.
Yep.
You know, that's an example of where the government gets involved. And the thing is, while everything could be cushy and rosy and everyone's all smiles now, something might happen down the track where all of that suddenly changes.
Yes.
You know? Yeah. Now, if, for example, you have a falling out with an American company and they decide not to do the right thing by you, well, the first thing you'd do is you'd have recourse through the courts, including the American courts.
That's right.
You know, you wouldn't have the same sort of recourse operating in the same fashion in China. It just wouldn't happen.
Yeah, there's this thing called due process, maybe. Yeah.
Yeah, which, you know, let's put it this way, I don't think they're too worried about.
Yeah, well, you know, I don't suppose they have to be too worried about it, do they?
No, it's the advantages of being a communist government, mate. You don't have to worry about stuff like that. And it's all points these are all points that have to be considered.
Yeah.
You know, whether we like to think about it this way or not, they're nonetheless points that we have to keep in mind.
Yeah. Yeah, so it's it's a bit of a tricky one, and going forward, we've got to really keep in mind what we're doing and what sort of exposure we're putting ourselves out to.
And the problem is the people often making the decisions about how this is going to be done and who's going to do it are people who don't have any technical understanding.
Yeah.
It's always a bit of a worry. My friend, we're out of time as always, but thank you very much for your time. By the way, don't forget benaylett.com. 1 L 2 T's in Aylett. That's the website. That's where you'll find all the contact information, loads of interesting stuff as well. benaylett.com.
10 questions, 10 correct answers.